Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a repassworded live version of Armchair Producers, episode 71. I'd forgotten what episode count we were on last week. I am one of your hosts, George Tarrant, the sickly and the destroyed. I'm here, as always, with the man who shall call Jesus out on his shit, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I'm well, and I've got some problems with that guy. Just wait until Festivus, right?
Now, are there problems with him or just with the organization surrounding him?
In fairness, it's probably his fan club.
Yeah,
his fan club. But then again,
game of telephones.
It's you gotta take responsibility for your people eventually.
That's true. The trouble starts at the head, as they say.
When the surgeons are out and about for Millwall, slicing people up, it's the team eventually has to take some responsibility for its fans.
They are not officially affiliated with that.
But it's the same. There'll be brawls in Melbourne, like the Melbourne's years gone by. The Melbourne whatever soccer club fans will get in the fights, and the soccer club gets hauled over the coals for it. So in this case, I'm holding Jesus somewhat responsible for his fan club. For Donald Trump and that guy in Kentucky who built the giant ark. Ken Ham is his name.
Now, you see, I'm still disappointed, ladies and gentlemen, for a little bit of backstory here. When I came to Australia, Travis had the decency to take me to an AFL, Australian Football League, match. And I was surprised because it made more sense to me than English football, for one thing. But as Travis would be able to attest, when we were walking out, I was very confused because I saw no police, no brawls, the club's teams, the supporters, they were just leaving, and it was generally pretty amicable. There was a little bit of shouting going on, but nothing. There was no police presence that I pointed out. And this is in complete polar opposite to what I was expecting of Australians in general. They're always associated with those rough and tough guys, who are going to have a fight. And I was just disappointed.
They fight when there's a reason to fight. I think that's the message here. It's not random acts of violence, random unmotivated act of violence. We'll leave that to our European brethren. But I think it's the Australian ways. We don't start fights, but we end them.
Yeah, unless it's about spilling my beer.
Well, I have had people try to start fights in pubs before because I've spilt their beer, but I would like to think most of our countrymen are a little bit more reasonable than that. It does depend on the beer, though. If it was West End, they'd probably shake your hand and say thank you very much because you just did them a favour. You'll remember our trip to Adelaide and your experience of West End lager. Yeah,
that was a thing. It wasn't as bad as my first attempt at VB, though. That was a singular experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you've been down that rabbit hole, it's. I
think it's quite impressive that they were able to distill the actual flavour of ashtray water into a semi-sparkling beverage.
It's it's an age-old recipe. It's been around for a long time. I guess people had a different palate in years gone by.
Yep, it was called none.
Well, pretty much. There's a kind of beer in certain parts of Australia called Crown Lager. You can certainly get it in Melbourne. When I was younger, people would treat Crown Lager as that was the special beer. That was the one you got at Christmas time. Or you cracked out when your wife was pregnant or something, for celebrations, you got the Crown Lager. And now it just tastes like VB. I mean, actually, no, because they brew it in the same distillery just down the road from my place as CUB. And I think they just swap out the bottles.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So, yeah, I mean, that's got to be 20 years ago. That was still being treated like some sort of premium beer, and now it's like, ew, yuck.
Yeah. It was a similar thing with growing up, it was Stella Artois always had these kind of very artistic black and white adverts promoting their beers and things like that. Later got picked up as a style that Peroni used to use, I think still to this day. But Stella Artois is gross. It is also nicknamed the wife beater because it is notorious for anyone who gets drunk on it just to get a little bit ragey, and it's not a good name, not a good association for a beer to have.
I think it's still for a long time in Australia had that association with being sort of European, premium, exclusive, and they had the black and white commercials run on TV at the film festival, and I know when I worked here in the early 2000s, I worked with some British people, and they'd be like, you turn up to places and they have Stella, and everybody'd be like, oh, Stella, and they'd be like, what? This shit? And you like we would be with VB, and we're like, no, this is a good stuff, it's European, right? And they're like, no, that's too much Chuck stuff back home. So I think when they started brewing it locally, and it kind of lost any sort of flavor it might have had in the process, and so I don't think it's quite got that allure anymore, the magic of being European.
Yeah. There's really not many beers when brewed elsewhere beyond their originating place are the same. Like Guinness just doesn't taste the same anywhere else except Ireland.
I know initially they used to brew it here many years ago, but now they import it.
Yeah.
But when I first started drinking it, they would actually brew it here in Melbourne under license.
Yeah.
From Guinness, and be like, nah, sorry, no.
Yeah, it ain't the same. But ladies and gentlemen, this is our episode where we are going to be reviewing the king of comedy, Martin Scorcese, Robert De Niro. One of the, do you think it would be fair to say that this is one of the more unassociated Scorseses? Yeah,
I think it is one of the forgotten ones. Like I know. When the reason it sort of came to mind for me was the comparisons everybody made with Joker when that came out. And I'm like, King of Comedy, I think I vaguely have heard of it around the place, but it certainly doesn't have the cachet of a fame of Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, Raging Bull to a lesser extent, Casino, I guess The Departed more recently. But of that period, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, King of Comedy was sort of a way it flowed from memory. He certainly isn't as fondly remembered as those previous to De Niro Scorsese collaborations, and certainly, I think it sort of popped up on my radar in the last 12 months. I've got to put it in my mind, I really should get around to watching that one day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one that kept on popping up on my radar as well, and just with Joker coming out and having now watched the King of Comedy, it's like, I really understand where they were putting those similes because there are so many.
Well, actually, tonight I went back after work this afternoon and watched Joker again because I haven't seen it since I saw it. Was it September, October last year? Yeah. And you're right. No, but. We should probably start with the actual film we're talking about rather than comparing it to other films.
Absolutely. So, King of Comedy, 1982 movie. It's an hour and 49 minutes, and it uses every second of that. And it's a slow burn, isn't it?
It's not an upbeat sort of action-oriented film. It's actually, I would say, it's a very uncomfortable film to watch.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe that's why, as a film, it's less fondly remembered than some of the others, well-known Scorsese pictures. Yeah. Even Taxi Driver, with its incredibly violent conclusion and stuff, it's somehow kind of felt more entertaining, or in some ways less dark than
this is really, really sardonic and cutting with every portrayal of every type of person in it, and it's like there's not a single person in this movie that comes across as sympathetic.
So the plot, for those who haven't familiar with it, like we weren't familiar with it up until recently, Rupert Pupkin is a passionate yet unsuccessful comic who craves nothing more than be in the spotlight, and to achieve this, he stalks and kidnaps his idol to take the spotlight for himself. Robert De Niro plays the titular Rupert Pupkin. His idol, who he kidnaps, the late-night talk show host Jerry Langford, played by the great Jerry Lewis, in a pretty kick-ass role. And he's assisted in his kidnapping efforts by another wacky fan of Jerry's named Marsha, played by Sandra Bernhard, who's a name. As soon as I saw her name, I'm like, I know that name. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I saw her face in the film, and I'm like, she's somebody. She's not. I've seen her in stuff. And I don't know.
No,
sorry.
no. Yes.
Well, what was going to be my suggestion for next week's film, by the way?
Oh, yes, please.
So I'm pretty sure you're a fan of that film, right?
I love that movie because it's so.
Okay, here we go. There's our connection next week. You thought it was going to be Scorcese, people. You would have thought it would be a lot easier, but we don't always go the well-trod path.
I know where we're going next after Hudson Hawk.
Save it. So you're going to give people a reason to tune in next week. So Sandra, I saw her face, and I'm like, I've seen her in stuff, but I couldn't pick it. She's had obviously she's a reasonably well-known Canadian actress throughout the years, but she's wonderfully kind of fucked up as well.
Yeah.
So we sort of have it was De Niro and Sandra Bernhardt's characters are hangers-on, if you will, who like to hang out with hang around, try to get autographs and get access to Jerry. And on one occasion, somehow Marsha manages to get her way into Jerry's limo, and De Niro's Rupert Pupkin character helps Jerry get her out of the car and get him safely into his limo and away. And in doing so, manages to sneak in and try and get 5 minutes with him. His basic goal here is he's obsessed with getting onto Jerry's show to ostensibly promote to do a monologue and to promote his comedy career. But I think it's deeper than that. He also has fantasy sequences where he's friends with Jerry, and he's having dinner and Jerry's begging him to take over his show, and he almost fantasizes about being bigger than Jerry, and that Jerry supplicating himself to his brilliance and stuff, which is kind of wacky. But on the other hand, I mean, it's probably not that unreal. Like a lot of people,
I feel like everyone has done that at some point. I remember back in the early 90s when I was big into the WWF back then, and I would have fantasy sequences in my head where I would play out these fight sequences and conversations with Vince McMahon and things like that. But you kind of lose that as you get older and life kind of beats you down a little bit and makes you realize what reality is. And there's a bizarre kind of childish innocence to or childish understanding of reality to De Niro's character, in that so often there are so many scenes where he's being told something very, very clear to everyone, but he's sort of like, yeah, I understand. And then it keeps going, and it's like, oh, okay, so you didn't understand.
But he runs it through his own filter, almost. I reject your reality and substitute my own. Yeah. You're 100% right. It's a great way of putting it. It's almost a childlike way of dealing with it. It is a childish fantasy of, being friends with your idol, and your idol begging you to tell me your secret. How do you do it? How do you do it?
Yeah.
So, not entirely unusual. It is the way he treats it so seriously. Yeah. He's almost childlike, and so he's kind of messed up. I mean, his insistence at trying to get onto the show and hanging around the office and stalking, almost the Jerry. He gets kicked out of the office a few times by the police, and he's sort of pushed to the edge where he sort of feels like he has no other option but to now attempt to be kidnapped of Jerry to get on the show. Was certainly the first part to me that reminded me so much of Joker was those fantasy sequences where he's fantasizing about being friends with Jerry. A very, very, now again watching it tonight, very similar to those scenes in Joker where Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is fantasizing about being in the audience of Robert De Niro's show, the Murray Franklin show in Joker, and being invited to come on be treated, like an equal and a friend. Oh, I'd give up all this in the show just to have a son like you and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so that's the very obvious link out of Joker. The other part that was also is that it feels like the King of Comedy was shot almost in the same universe as Taxi Driver. One of my favorite films. So I assume it's New York. The New York that they shot this in looks very similar to the New York of Taxi Driver, sort of dirty, run down, slightly dangerous. Though we are frequenting, I think, a different part of that New York, in this film than we were in Taxi Driver. But again, I think if you look closely at Joker, you'll see again the similarities are quite close, or the feel of the city, the kind of setting.
It's definitely. I wonder if it's more of a commentary on the time period that Scorsese was kind of working in, and that because it's that gritty, sort of like gloomy, almost kind of feel of the society of everything. Because everyone is, at the beginning of King of Comedy, you've got all those people just begging for autographs and then you've even got Jerry's just walking down the street and he stops to give someone an autograph. So like, oh, can you talk to my son on the phone? So like, no, I'm really busy. So like, I hope you get cancer. There's that cruelty to it, which
apparently is based on a real thing that happened to Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, apparently so. But I was going to say it's kind of similar in theme to the classic Wall Street and just how greedy and kind of poisoned society was in that kind of bubble of time a little bit. It's a curious. I don't know. I just found myself kind of simulating them and going, okay, that a lot of filmmakers were kind of angry at society.
I think it was a general cynicism in the mid to late 70s that took over. And I think a lot of it had to do with generally it's attributed to things like the Vietnam War. So I think, that's the fact that hundreds of thousands of American lives and ungodly amounts of money had been spent on a war which had made people very, very hard and cynical, and they essentially lost. I think that had contributed to a lot of filmmakers coming back in that sort of general sense of mistrust. Films like you look at films like Rambo, which is remembered now as a stupid action film, but really wasn't if you go back and see the original.
Number one is actually fantastic.
First one, obviously, was the rest of them did turn into stupid action films.
Yeah.
The first one. And I think the second part of that, often, especially in American filmmakers, is Watergate and the Nixon years. They've come out of a horrible experience of a pointless war which they've lost, and then they flow from that straight into they're basically having a criminal as a president who, I think that then basically got let off by his replacement, Gerald Ford. So I think those sort of events sort of really led to a very cynical 10 years of filmmaking, which only really, I think, in my opinion at least, started to really get turned over midway through the Reagan years. So we've seen films like Top Gun, that became the flavor of the day.
Yeah.
But
what do you think of this movie, kind of aside from its kind of feel? I mean, this seems like quite a different role to what De Niro had been doing up to this point. And I really liked him in it.
Oh, De Niro is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in an incredible vein of creative form here, from films like Raging Bull, The Taxi Driver, and this, and there may have been other films in amongst it. I mean, maybe one of the Godfather films around this time. I'm not sure of my exact timeline of Robert's career, but he's in incredible form here, and with his one of his great creative partners in Scorcese. Apparently, they didn't work together for almost 10 years again after this, went into Goodfellas.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's in a way, I think he's a very similar character to Travis Bickle. Is River Putkin. He's an outsider who wants to be an insider. And I think they do in the end. Actually, they probably take fairly similar paths to achieve what they wanted to do. They take drastic, radical, almost in varying degrees of violence steps to achieve that goal of becoming an insider. The people who don't really belong in society, and
Yeah.
society lets them know. I felt like it was a similar vein to Travis Bickle, but a different kind of Travis Bickle. So I'm not sure it's a world away from the stuff he'd done before. If you look at it from that perspective, he's playing a similar kind of character, but he's playing it through a different lens.
Okay, so I'm just looking at his IMDb, and obviously the one that really got him and Scorcese noticed was Mean Streets back in '73. Then his next movie was Godfather Part 2 in '74. So, wow. Taxi Driver, '76. A movie I've never even heard of called 1900. The Last Tycoon, New York, New York. The Godfather series, the Godfather saga on TV. Then he did The Deer Hunter, which is a phenomenal movie. Followed by Raging Bull, True Confessions, and then this. And then his next movie was Once Upon a Time in America. So, what a tear, for one thing.
Yeah.
And, fuck.
it's a hell of a run of form, and it's easy to forget. I think we talked about it last week. It's easy to forget with the kind of shit he's done in the last 10, 15 years of his career that he was at one point in time the gold standard in acting.
Yeah.
But everyone's got to sell out eventually and do a bad grandpa. I think he was very good again. He had a smallish role in Joker, but I thought he was. You could almost see that's where Rupert Pupkin might have ended up being, like Murray Franklin. It's almost like 20 years later, and here he is.
Yeah,
which is again, I'm sure Todd. I'm certain that maybe Todd Phillips had that thought as well, and he must have been chuffed as all fuck to get De Niro in to do that role. Few people could have pulled it off quite as well, but as succinctly considering his history with this kind of a similar kind of property.
Yeah, absolutely.
I found this film actually in a way. So like I said earlier, I think Raging Bull is not Raging Bull. Taxi Driver is one of my favorite films. It would be in my top 10. I love that film, and I did not enjoy this film. Period. But that's not to say it's a bad film. I'm saying it's very good. I don't know that you can enjoy it. I'm not sure it is to be enjoyed. But what I find interesting is I think this film maybe is more relevant today than a film like Taxi Driver in some ways. I kind of feel like the Rupert Pupkin character, and maybe that's why Joker resonated so well last year, is because it's a very similar type of character. Arthur Fleck and Pupkin's character is a very similar kind of character. Yeah. We can really plug into that disassociated or socially awkward, put down upon characters. I'm not saying they're necessarily sympathetic, but I don't know. I feel like there's some strong incel energy with Rupert Pupkin's character and with Arthur Fleck's character in Joker. I think I feel like there's still something to say. That's my opinion, at least. What did you think of it? Did you actually enjoy it?
I actually enjoyed it. I think the big thing for me that has always been the hang-up is my predetermined expectations. I'm just looking at the hold screen on Amazon Prime where I watched it, and it's the king of comedy, and it's saying IMDb 7.8 comedy. This is not actually a comedy.
I've heard people describe it as a comedy. I might have a few points in the film. I'm like, am I supposed to be laughing at some point? Because it was just incredible.
There is real snide, biting comedy within it, but it's not the kind of comedy that I would put a label of comedy on it. If you were going to put a label on it, I'd say dark humor at the very loosest term of comedy. But even then, it's not dark humor in what most people would just automatically assume with that tagline. I would I feel like there are slowly but surely becoming together this little subgenre of movies which deserves its own tagline of character piece. And that's just it. It's about characters, and sometimes those characters could be really, really funny, like what's his name? Rob Bryan and
Oh, the trip, the holiday, the
Yeah,
trip to Spain, the trip to
yeah,
wherever type of
those movies, they're actually just character pieces between these two just bandying backwards and forwards, and they're not comedies in the traditional sense of the word. They're character pieces that just happen to be funny. This is a character piece about really broken people that is around the world of comedy, but it's not necessarily comedy. It's I don't know. I don't know how I would kind of tag this movie, but it's not a comedy. There is funny elements to it, but that doesn't make a comedy. And
No, maybe some people might laugh at it. I found myself going, "This is just cringy." The whole film was cringy as fuck.
yeah,
Uh,
I actually really loved when you finally got to see Pikmin actually do his set. It's like, that's actually really funny to me. I found that all very funny. And it was bizarre that there was kind of this hour and 20 minutes of build up where you never see his skit or hear any element of it truly. And it's like, okay, is it going to be an absolute fucking failure? Is it,
a la Joker.
yeah. Or, oh, he's actually really funny. Cool. And the payoff for that is really was really rewarding for me. And it's like, okay, that's fine. The one thing that really didn't work for me was, what's her name? Bernhard's character. She was an interesting side plot, but then it just stopped. It was like, okay, you've had your moment. Let's just end that. And it was like, oh, okay.
She disappeared, didn't she? Like, she was there.
Yeah.
She played a role, and let's just forget about her.
Yeah, and I feel like apparently this was like one of her very first roles, and they said, "Oh, just improv," and she did a good job of that. But I feel like it felt a little out of place with the rest of the movie, where everyone was so cold-heartedly real. Just their interactions, and then hers was this heightened element of mania, and it never got any kind of resolution, positive or negative. It's like, okay, it's that character again doing stuff. Oh, she's now in her underwear.
The second character had a story. She obviously had some sort of history with Jerry, and it would have been interesting to have learned a little bit more about her. But as you sort of said, it's an hour 49 minutes, and I've kind of crammed as much into that as they possibly can.
Yeah, and I was kind of annoyed that it kept cutting back to her and Jerry when Pitkin was in the studio, because there was just awesome bits like him just sitting down and just very casually and calmly talking to the FBI and saying, okay, yeah, I need makeup. It's like just going through the motions of, yeah, this is going to happen. This is what I'm going to do. And it was great. I feel like if they had just kind of cut away and just followed him throughout that whole sequence, that would have been awesome. But yeah, we are armchair producers. We are not actually.
One of the great living filmmakers of our time. I guess I'm going to go with his decision on that one.
That's fair. That's fair.
It was, I enjoyed Jerry Lewis very much in this sort of role. I think I've read some of the stuff that people were, particularly Robert De Niro, were worried he was going to ham it up too much and try and be too funny. But again, he seemed to think he was just playing himself.
Yeah,
but, it seemed to be a role that was made for him, really.
Yeah, I've never watched anything of Jerry Lewis's. Never.
None of his films with Dean Martin.
Nope.
I'm gonna have to call this back. We are not going to watch Hudson Hawk. This can't be allowed. This aggression can't be allowed to stand. You can't call yourself a film fan and not have seen some Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin stuff. So I really want to watch Hudson Hawk, but I think
you can set that for me as homework.
I think so. Find yourself about the Nutty Professor.
Oh, the original Nutty Professor. All right.
That was traditional Saturday afternoon fare here in Australia. Saturday or Sunday afternoons would always be a Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin movie on TV when there were like 4 channels.
We're still watching Hudson Hawk. I'm not missing this opportunity. But yeah, because obviously I know who Jerry Lewis is, and seeing him in this role, I instantly got the kind of feel of him doing the same thing that a lot of people get when they've watched their first ever serious role by Robin Williams. It's like, oh fuck, okay, that is not what I was expecting when I think of a Robin Williams movie or a Jerry Lewis role. No, this instantly it captured your attention, and he was brilliant throughout it. He was really, really just measured and tired, and it was just all so in character. It was fantastic. Really,
cynical is the word as well. He was very cynical sort of character who had no time for anybody. He'd been fucked around enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says that he was just playing himself, and the praise for his role shouldn't come to him. It's like, well, okay, maybe you could take this as a learning curve, and maybe have grown as a person and not been so cynical, but regardless, you delivered a fucking awesome performance, my friend.
It's a great example that sometimes, as they say, there's a fine line between comedy and tragedy. There's that line in Joker, I thought my life was a tragedy, now I just realized it's a comedy. Yeah. And I think that's possibly why so many great, really, really great comic actors actually end up being. It doesn't take a great deal of effort to twist that comic character into something that's actually quite dark and scary.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That's why you have people like Robin Williams has done some very creepy characters over his time, and wonderful serious characters as well. But I think the dark turn is a lot easier. Jim Carrey did it very effectively as well. Jerry Lewis here, I think, has done it quite well.
Yeah.
Even to a lesser extent, Adam Sandler has pulled off some fairly interesting, darker sort of roles.
Yeah.
Over
Steve Carell has done it.
Steve Carell actually lists this film as a great inspiration for his role in Foxcatcher. If you haven't seen Foxcatcher, it's a wonderful film, and Steve's great in it. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good example here, and I don't think Jerry actually. I can't think of seeing him in anything else where he played anything remotely straight. Potentially there was. I'm certainly no Jerry Lewis scholar, but it's. I feel like this is one that was made for him, and I really, when you sort of watch this, I'm like, man, I wish he'd done more shit like this.
I'm just really curious to see what he could have produced, and I think a lot of credit for that comedians in serious roles does get kind of attributed to Robin Williams in many ways. And if Jerry Lewis had been doing this early 80s through to the rest of his career, just peppering some of these serious roles through, we could have seen some really interesting roles. I would love to have seen Chevy Chase or Steve Martin just take on those really serious, dark roles. I feel like especially just even in his stuff in Community, Chevy Chase is kind of creepy with a lot of stuff he does. Give him an interesting story and a broken, compelling character to do. He could have been really interesting.
Apparently, he's a complete cunt.
That I've heard. Yeah.
That's he's probably not going straying hugely from his normal persona to play those creepier roles. As I said, I went back and I watched Joker again this afternoon. The parallels are uncanny.
Yeah.
And I think if you hadn't, I think it's almost a surface level thing. I said last time about Joker, it looks like Taxi Driver. On closer inspection, it really does look a lot more like King Comedy.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly so, and you kind of wonder. I think Scorcese at one point was involved in that Joker film. Yeah. So I wonder what he made of that.
Yeah, he probably looked at it and went, "Oh, so when you wanted me involved, you wanted to just copy it." Okay, that's fine. It's a compliment. Because the thing with going into Joker is they didn't fuck it up. And it is, if you have watched The King of Comedy or if you know of the Scorcese Association, you can obviously feel those vibes. But at the same time, it doesn't do any disservice to it. It still tells a good, compelling story for Arthur Fleck. It still looks good. It still does everything. It'll be curious to see what they do if they do this supposed sequel. and if everyone is back on board, and if they keep that style, or if they do.
I was thinking about that this evening, actually, while I was watching Joker, because you watch it again, and like I know I've had people who said they didn't like it, or they thought it was irresponsible, it's nonsense. But in the news this week, of course, I don't know if we talked about it last week, but the news was that Michael Keaton potentially coming back to the Batman role.
Yes,
that was the thing that popped into my mind, because I'm like, how there's been talk about, now they've got the multiverse. What can they do? Can with is that gonna it's where they're gonna try and maybe slot Keaton's Batman into it. Maybe Affleck's Batman's going to be in there somehow. But how do you incorporate something this fucking brilliant as Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Joker, and something you pulled off so successfully with Todd Phillips's film here? And how do you slot Batman into that and try and make anything like a Batman film? Like, it's a.
I honestly don't think that they're doing the multiverse, or if they are, I feel like they're gonna do what I've been wanting them to do for so long, which is just that Neverworld thing where it's like, you know what, we just have a really cool combination of cast and crew for a cool idea for X character, so let's just do that. And we've got our core range of Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, and we're going to try and tie those together. But we tried the shared universe thing, didn't really work for us. We'll probably try it again in 5 years' time, but for now, we're just going to do these independent stories that we can get cameos in. And, like Ezra Miller's Flash did a cameo in the Flash TV show, and everyone kind of lost their minds. Went, oh my God, they're doing the multiverse!
No, I didn't mention this, but I actually went off and I watched, I think it was a Flash episode, the first episode of their crossover episode, The Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Oh, do not watch those.
Oh, it was unbearably awful. Just
those things, I love the idea of them. They are a really cool idea, but in practicality, they are bullshit, because you have to have watched basically every episode in the lead up for all of the characters going in to be able to fully understand what's going on. They are not standalone stories, and in Australia in particular, it's a fucking nightmare. You have to sign up to like at least 3 streaming services to get all of them as they're released. Otherwise, you have to pay through the fucking nose on all of the digital purchases to get them. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on with Arrow, because I've only been following Flash, and now they're having problems. I hate it.
I mean, I can see all those practical issues you've just spoken about, but on top of that, they're really badly made. They're cheap. They look cheap. The actors are bargain basement shithouse actors. The guy who plays Superman looks like garbage.
Superman.
It's just bad. It's all bad. It really was disappointing. But I was at high hopes. I'm like, I really like that comic, but
no.
I disagree with you in the sense that I think they will go back to the shared universe faster than they were before, because it's kind of still there, because it's still got Aquaman and Wonder Woman did well, so it kind of still
exactly. It's just going to be soft. The core group are gonna have their movies. Like there's the forthcoming Wonder Woman sequel, which we don't quite know how that's really playing out, because Steve Trevor's is back and he died. And maybe they're going to explain it, or maybe it's just like, oh, you know what? We're just telling a different Wonder Woman story here, and the character of Steve Trevor's is a staple of Wonder Woman for many, many years, so we're just having him. But at the same time, it might be explained. Aquaman is getting a sequel, and then there's the nebulous Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, which is filming now and no one knows anything of, and anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is lying to you. And then we've got the nebulous Superman. Henry Cavill might be back for the role. He might not. Who knows? They don't know what they're saying. The last thing that was officially heard was, it's difficult to have Superman associate with modern audiences. Like, yeah, an illegal alien. That's really difficult for people to understand and take.
They're lazy, and they keep telling lazy stories. What's be interesting as well, we've kind of gone off topic a little bit, as usual. With the Snyder Cut, are you excited about the Snyder Cut?
I am excited about the Snyder Cut, but first of all, I don't like the fact that I'm going to have to fake sign up to Foxtel again to watch it, but I don't like the fact that they're only putting 10 million into this thing, and I don't know if that's going to be enough. I'm really curious. I'm so interested about how much of the film they had actually gotten filmed before Zack left, and how much they need to actually do to make it a cohesive, coherent story. I love the fact that this is apparently going to really flesh out Cyborg's character. I love that it's supposed to be bringing in a lot of those things that I was really excited about for the Justice League movie before it was released, about, black suit Superman and more of the of Batfleck and all of that stuff. So I am definitely going to watch it for sure, but I wonder if it's going to be we petitioned for this and okay, no. And it's interesting because it's opened up a floodgate of other director's cuts that are just going to HBO Max. And it's like, okay, you know what? I'm glad that there is at least a platform for directors to get their cut out there. But at the same time, if they've created a platform, because, the announcement of the Snyder Cut of Justice League was suspiciously close to the announcement and release of HBO Max. May have something to do with trying to push those subscriber numbers a little bit.
We're going to give them a reason to sign up. I personally am interested to see it.
Yep.
But I don't know how much lipstick you can put on a pig and expect it to be anything, I think I've said it before. It was a famous Australian football coach, Alan Jeans, who once said, "You can't turn bullshit into strawberry jam." And I know, half the problem was that oil and water effect of Whedon and Snyder rubbing against each other.
Yeah,
that I just don't think it's going to be. Batman vs Superman sucked balls as far as I'm concerned. I know you liked it, and I thought the Man of Steel was average at best. So I don't understand personally why all of a sudden he was going to turn it all around and make Justice League
I don't think it's right to think about turning Justice League around, because the movie that Joss Whedon released, considering all of the circumstances around the production, it was impressive that they got it over the line. And it was mildly entertaining. It was a letdown for a Justice League movie. But this, I don't think you are going to enjoy the Snyder Cut because you did not like Batman vs.
We walked out of Justice League and we said, wasn't that bad?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a bad rating for a film like that. When you walked out of Endgame, you're going, how am I ever going to climb that height again? But Justice League, you're like...
I have gone back to Endgame a couple of times, and it is something that you should not put a rating on, because it is a movie that is entirely orgasm. It is release of 10 years, and no movie, none, is ever going to be able to get to that.
True. I mean, even if we go back to the first Avengers film, which was, again... Oh, that's so fucking great. This is the team-up movie we've always wanted. And then you go, Justice League, it was all right. Because but we walked in with, I walked in with very low expectations because the reviews were awful, and I didn't like Batman vs. Superman.
But that's my point, is you have not enjoyed, or you've mildly entertained early Snyder Superman. You didn't like Batman versus Superman. This Snyder Cut Justice League, it's Snyder's version. So you didn't like what he did with Batman versus Superman. You are almost guaranteed to not like what he does here because this is just him. This is the idea that he was going for. If you liked those other ones, you are probably gonna like this because he's finishing a project. But anyone who's nonplussed about Zack Snyder or anything like that, they're probably going to look at it and go, okay, I don't know. I don't understand why people were petitioning for this. I don't understand anything about it. It's a movie. People are probably going to either really love it or really hate it. And those people that really love it are those people who generally enjoy Snyder movies because it's his movie.
I like Snyder films. Like I loved it initially. I loved the Dawn of the Dead remake. I even like Sucker Punch, which everybody hates. But it was, and I thought Superman was okay. It was really the only one I've actively disliked was Batman versus Superman. So it's I'm not an anti-Snyder person, but I'll be curious to see it when it comes out. But back to my original point, there's been whispers or stories I've read that they're trying to figure out how to slot Joaquin Phoenix into a Batman film, or a Batman into a Joker film. And obviously I imagine they're going to have to pay Joaquin a very large sum of money to come back and do it again. But maybe something like an actor with the cachet of someone like Keaton could be an interesting person to play off someone like Joaquin Phoenix. But I mean, how you explain the age differential, I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing with that, just my creative mind thinking here is, what year was Keaton Batman for the first time? It was
89.
89. And Joker was set in the late 70s?
Late 70s, early 80s, something like that.
So you could arguably have like a more mature Batman facing off against a Joker, and maybe it's not even the first time that those two have engaged. They do a jump cut of 10 to 12 years or something like that.
Yeah, but Batman's in the Joker and he's a child.
That is the problem. But if they are going to embrace the multiverse, which arguably they have, but it's TV, so it doesn't necessarily count in WB's eyes or in Marvel's eyes because fuck Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. apparently. They could get away with it. I don't think you are going to get it. I really don't. I think at best it will be like a picture of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker persona on the like that with the mirror with the lights all around it. There's going to be a picture of Joker and the inspiration for the new Joker for Robert Pattinson's movie. It's going to be a tagline at the end of the movie.
We'll see how they go. I mean, obviously that may be the way they go, and what Joaquin wants to do is probably going to drive a lot of that.
That would be an interesting story to tell. If Joaquin Phoenix's character of Arthur Fleck, Joker, literally mentored the new Joker. That would be an interesting combination of someone. They could play this bizarre thing of someone who's trying to politicize a movement that was not a movement. It was just someone with Arthur Fleck had mental illness. And someone comes along and so like, you know what? I can weaponize that. I need to talk to him. I need to make him a spokesperson, and I can be the point of the spear that people hit on. And again, that would be politically appropriate for the times that we're living, where everything is being politicized.
Masks.
If they were trying to do that, that would be fucking cool. They could tell a really interesting story with that.
It'd be interesting to see even pull that off. I guess, like I said, I would like. I'd just be glad to see him get in the role again. And if it's a film with Todd Phillips wants to tell the story, Joaquin wants to do it again. then I'll be on board for whatever I want to do. Really, if it's Joaquin reading the phone book for an hour and a half, I'll go, yeah, sure, cool.
The other option that they could do if they want to get Joker back for a sequel is if they do alternate realities where Thomas Wayne becomes Batman, and that would equate for the age difference. The father is Batman before Batman.
But we'll wait until it's a long way off in the future now. But I'm excited to see that they're talking about having Michael in his conversations. I guess nothing's been signed yet, from what I understand. But the idea of trying to get Michael Keaton back into the Cal again, I like that. I love Michael Keaton's Batman.
Yeah, and I love there was he was at a convention and he was asked something along the lines of, "Oh, what do you think of all these other Batmans and Batfleck?" And his response was, "I'm Batman." And it's like, yes, you are. Damn right you are.
And the original one, he was very controversial. I remember the story I heard from Tim Burton was the internet exploded before the internet even existed.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Mom becomes Batman.
That's why I feel, hey, look, maybe Pattinson will be all right.
I think that he's going to be good. I think that people are going to get a lot more confidence about him in this more serious role and not just a heartthrob after people watch Tenet.
Yeah, maybe I'll withhold my. Everyone was very cynical about Batfleck, and he turned out to be, well, he did about as well as he could have given the material he was given.
I really love Batfleck.
Sorry?
I really love Ben Affleck.
I thought that's that one scene, the one scene in Batman vs Superman, the one good scene in that film where Batman just takes down a room full of goons, Arkham City style. You're like, no, don't go away. Don't do other things. That's the bit. That's the bit there. You got it right.
That was
go away. Watch that bit for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And give us a film of that. That's what
that was genuinely beautiful. It was after watching that scene, I so want them to make Arkham Asylum as a movie.
Well, there's an idea. Maybe that's what they'll do. Maybe finally my prediction about video games becoming good films.
Is that standing bet? Now,
long enough, I'll be right.
About King of Comedy and its pseudo-successor, Joker. I am going to do some homework and watch Jerry Lewis and the Nutty Professor. We are going to talk about Hudson Hawk next week, which is, and I've already got the movie after that sorted out. I'm going to try and source the number one choice that I have, but if not, I've got number two. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about tonight?
Yes, I gave it a heads up last week, but I've been keenly following along with the latest reboot, or the new reboot of Perry Mason. Perry Mason. So this is a short-run 8-episode series airing in Australia on the Foxtel.
Okay.
It's obviously based on the 1957 TV series, which ran for 200-odd episodes, starring Raymond Burr as master criminal defense attorney, which used to be on TV after school. For me, it was Perry Mason.
Yeah.
After school. And that was kind of why I'm actually a fan of it. I think she kind of made me want to be a lawyer a little bit when I was a kid.
He was cool.
He was cool, but it was was kind of a formula. There was kind of a formula. It was almost seemingly impossible case to get the innocent man off. And all it would take would be Perry to do some funky legal maneuvering and get the guilty guy on the stand, who would eventually he'd browbeat him and like, "Yeah, I did it. I tells you, and I'm glad I tells you." Every episode was the same way.
Yeah, it was serialized. You knew exactly how it was going to start, middle, and end, exactly the same way that every episode of Columbo was. It was that era of you, but it was Perry Mason.
It was good. It was good telly. I enjoyed it. It's kind of iconic, but so it's ironic it's taken so long to go back to that well. So this one stars Matthew Rhys, who is I think a Welsh actor, if I'm not mistaken, but probably best known for me at least. He starred in The Americans, and one of my favorite shows. And more recently, he was seen in the Tom Hanks film "Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood," the Mr. Rogers film.
Oh yes.
And so he plays Perry Mason in this one. Now, I'll just be upfront and say I've only watched the first 2 episodes because that's all we've screened right now. It being released week by week, frustratingly. And Matthew Rhys really plays it a little bit differently. Now, this for synopsis is in booming 1932 Los Angeles, a down-and-out defense attorney takes on the case of a lifetime. Now, this is different. This is not your mama's Perry Mason. So we're 2 episodes in, and he hasn't been anywhere near a court. We haven't really actually been anywhere near a courtroom in the guise of a defense attorney, I should say. He was a witness in my case, but so he's more like a private investigator in this sort of in the first couple episodes. He works. He's a World War I veteran, as it sort of says, down on his luck defense attorney who's doing, I guess, investigator work for a friend of his, played by John Lithgow of all people, which is wonderful.
Hey.
And, it's great. Hey, that's John Lithgow. Wow, that's cool. I love this. He's investigating a couple whose son was kidnapped. And when they went to pay the ransom, they paid the ransom and their son was murdered despite them paying the ransom. And there's all sorts of, conspiracies whirling around. Did they kill the kid themselves? Were they in on the kidnapping? Was it fake? Yada, yada, yada. John Lithgow is being signed up as the defense attorney for one of the parents who's been accused of being involved in the killing. And Perry is his investigator who's looking into the clues and being very sneaky and nosy and trying to get to the bottom of what really happened. So only 2 episodes in, but I'm quite enjoying it. Okay. What it really has the vibe of anything, actually, it really has a LA Noire vibe. If you ever played that video game, it even looks. I mean, it's set a few years earlier. It's set in the 30s rather than the 40s or 50s. I think that video game was, but he has got that Columbo look because he's got the
he does,
and the hat and stuff. He looks a lot like Columbo. Kind of acts a lot like Columbo in a lot of ways. It kind of maybe we just couldn't get the rights to remake Columbo, and I thought, fuck it, we'll do Perry Mason and just.
Well, apparently there's an ongoing petition between Gary Whitta, who was one of the original writers of Rogue One and the Book of Eli, for him, he wants to reboot Columbo, and he wants Mark Ruffalo as Columbo.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're kind of cutting his grass here because at least the first couple episodes, this is very Columbo-esque territory.
Okay.
So it's really sort of seedy, underbelly of Los Angeles in the 30s. And, I'm kind of curious if we're ever going to get Perry, back in defense attorney, berating witnesses and getting him to confess on the stand kind of level of Perry Mason, or wherever this is just sort of reimagining him as it's more of an action-oriented sort of almost 1930s Magnum PI kind of character.
So is this you say that this is a mini-series? Is it just one overarching storyline, or is it sort of like each episode has been a different case but with connections to? Or
no, it's at least I'll take it that the whole series, as far as I can tell, will revolve around this case involving the parents whose child was kidnapped and murdered. The first 2 episodes, that's the only story. There are other little subplots floating around here and there, but that's the engine that pushes the story along. Is the story about the parents and their kidnapped and murdered son. I imagine that's going to take up a whole 8 episode series. That's kind of how we do things these days, isn't it? We don't tell story of a week things anymore.
Oh yeah, you do. That's just on standard network television.
Yeah, well, is there anything on network television that's not fucking reality TV?
Reruns of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
They're doing a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The
first run was bad enough.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's overrated. I said it, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a short review. I guess it's, as I said, it's hard to say too much without giving too much away and being only 2 episodes in. But if you liked, like for me, it was actually no, I've got to watch this because I watched the series for years, the old series, and I am also a big fan of Matthew Rhys, who I think he's a wonderful actor. And I'm just going to throw a controversial idea out there. There's one point in the episode where he was walking around in a coat and a large hat.
Right.
I thought to myself, Indy?
Oh. So, sir, you are suggesting that someone else, aside from Harrison Ford, could possibly be Indiana Jones?
Someone's eventually going to be Indiana Jones. He's not Harrison.
After death, there will be. I think
River Phoenix did it, didn't he?
River Phoenix was young Indiana Jones, sir.
Oh, completely.
Puberty truly hit in and changed him entirely into a different person.
There are certain things that we just know are certain in life. You know, death, taxes, another Star Wars film, and that Lucasfilm and Disney are not going to leave money on the table. And there's money on the table under the in the envelope titled Indiana Jones.
Unfortunately, at the moment, it's currently under contract by Harrison Ford because that was the only way he was coming back as Han Solo.
If he wants to do it again, then fine. You know,
go for a fourth time. Sure, I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm sure for a fourth time, it's been so long since the third film.
Yeah.
But if Harrison wants to do what everybody's expecting with this film, if he doesn't, it's going to hand a whip over to somebody else. I'm just saying they should do that. I'm saying if they do that,
you just got that.
Just got a silhouette of him, with the hat and stuff. I'm like, maybe he's not a big name, but
it doesn't need a big name to make a big movie. That's
well, I mean, they went out and got Alden Ehrenreich to play Han Solo. I mean, and I actually thought he did a pretty decent job as Han Solo.
He did, yeah.
Film. But that's not his fault. I thought he was solid. So you're right. You don't necessarily have to get a household name.
It's almost like he was Solo in a movie of benignity.
That's a stretch.
Now, I have one little thing that I want to talk about, and that is the sudden surge of anime and good quality anime onto Netflix. So within the space of about 4 days, it seems, they have got the first 4 seasons of One Piece. They have got the first few seasons of Food Wars. They have got Parasite. Now, for those who do not understand, obviously, Travis, you are just like dyed in the war anime fan. Of course, you'll understand.
I watched anime on the weekend. Thank you very much.
And what was that?
I was at my parents' place in Apollo Bay, and Your Name was on SBS Vice.
Whether that's anime or not, that's up for
debate. Gatekeeping.
But good choice. Good choice.
Wonderful film.
Yes, it is beautiful. Yes, so I have smashed my way through the first 4 seasons, 100 and something episodes. I can't remember how many. I lost count. Of One Piece. One Piece is possibly the longest running anime of all time because it's still going and they're still releasing the mangas as well. Some people are projecting that it's going to keep going until the manga is going to keep going until 2024 or 2025. So the anime is just going to keep going a little bit more than that. It is a delight. One Piece is set in a world where there are basically 4 great oceans on this planet. And we follow the character Monkey D. Luffy. And he eats a devil fruit. Now, devil fruits are rare, unusual fruits that imbue you with superpowers of certain descriptions. But it robs you of your ability to be able to swim. And you literally just sink to the bottom. And you die. And it is Monkey D. Luffy. He ventures out to become king of the pirates because they are currently in the midst of a renaissance of pirate fare because of Goldie Rogers, who was the first pirate to have successfully scaled the entire ocean of this planet, and he, for temporarily at the point of season 4, reasons unknown, is captured and executed, but his last dying breath and last words are that if you want all of the gold that he has, which is referred to as One Piece, you can go out and find it. And it births this surge of pirating. It is, in many ways, your standard anime fare of sort of like over-the-top grandiose fights and things where they're suddenly interrupted for 2 or 3 episodes where they talk about the genesis of a certain character within the fight and how and why they got the reasons for the fight that they're currently in and things like that. But it is entirely charming. The animation is beautiful. As with most animes, in all honesty, there aren't too many that go as long as this that have shoddy animation. The Japanese and the English dub are all very well acted, and they do a good job of syncing it up overall, so it doesn't look that kind of weird. My voice is not doing what the rest of my mouth is doing, kind of dissonance. It's just really enjoyable, fair, fluffy, but at the same time, they can also actually really go into a lot of emotions. And
like comfort food television.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's the same for, I'm now going to just go through Food Wars, which is an anime about chefs and how they go through. Essentially, think Harry Potter meets Chef World. And it's this one young chef who joins a school for chefs, and he's just going through and fighting sort of like cooking battles to progress. And it's great. And the food that they make, you kind of can't help but go, wow, I want to eat it. It's just really yummy, and it's lovely. And I love the fact
that you've watched this before, because I remember you talking about it in the past.
Absolutely right. And I've watched Parasite as well. And Parasite is one of those more serious, darker, not in the same genre as Death Note or something like that, but it's that more serious anime. There's definitely not anywhere near as much comedy about it. But it's nice to see that they are really, instead of it being on an anime exclusive streaming service, it is now on a very mainstream streaming service. I think that there's a lot of options for people to be able to kind of get in and watch it. It's great for kids. It's Parasite, maybe not. But one thing,
I assume this has nothing to do with the Academy Award-winning film.
No, this is about a alien host invading the body. But it's
a literal parasite.
Yeah, it's a true parasite. But One Piece and Food Wars are just really, really good. There's something that you can have on. There's plenty of action each episode. There's kind of almost a moral to the story kind of thing for a lot of the episodes, but at the same time, the number one rule of most anime is you've got a dream, fucking fight for it. And that's great.
No, so would you describe, if you were going to recommend it to somebody who was new to anime, which of these 3 would be your recommended entry point? If someone
say that One Piece is probably the best one to go into if you have never experienced anime before, because it's the best at setting its own standard of, this is what we are going to do, and we are going to consistently hit this every damn time. We are going to have, there's action, there's comedy, there's comical romance, there's drama. I would put it on the same, almost on the same kind of level as like a Doctor Who episode, in the there's some things that might challenge a younger viewer, but at the same time, if they get through that, they're going to go, okay, cool, that was interesting. I want to see the next one. And, they're like 18 minutes excluding the intro sequence, which is fine. You can get like 3, 4, 5 episodes in, and so you go, all right, you know what? I'm kind of invested in this. But at the same time, if you've watched 3 episodes and you go, nah, this ain't for me, you've lost maybe an hour. So
they're bite-sized episodes.
Yeah, and it's just really enjoyable, easy. I would definitely recommend One Piece over those 3 that have been added on. But Netflix is slowly but surely adding more anime, and it's really good that they're doing that, because whilst Crunchyroll and Anime Lab do really good jobs of being that location to go to for all of your anime needs, if you don't know about anime, you're missing out, because there's some really fucking amazing stories in there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to get into. It's difficult to get into though, because it's yeah. I mean, I find it. Stories are a very particular kind of story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're usually kind of fucking weird because they're Japanese.
Racist.
I love how weird they are. That's my favorite thing about Japan, is they look at the world from a different perspective. So yeah, it's. I mean, like something like One Punch Man, which is my favorite, is truly bizarre. You know,
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit more universally accessible than some of the stuff. But you know, like I watched Ghost in the Shell. We watched Ghost in the Shell for our anime series a couple of years ago.
That's hard to watch.
It didn't do anything for me. But the animation's gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Ghost in the Shell, the first movie and the sequel are really good quality. The Ghost in the Shell, the series, it's got those really annoying talking robots in it, and they're just really, really annoying. And they could have just done this really kind of like adult themed story, cyberpunky detective noir kind of thing, and they did, but they didn't go all in on it, and it's like, okay, it's frustrating. But
there's something like Your Name on the weekend, which you said is borderline whether it's ever actually just a Japanese animated film or it's anime or not.
Yeah.
He was the guy who made it. Used to work for Miyazaki, so you know, like
yeah,
kind of Miyazaki anime.
Yeah. What I would say, if you, this is your homework. Okay, I am going to do Nutty Professor. What I would like you to do is experience, even if you just have to do like a 7-day trial for Anime Lab or Crunchyroll.
I'll go Crunchyroll.
Okay, watch Mob Psycho 100.
Mob Psycho 100. Just the name makes me go, what the fuck is this?
So Mob Psycho 100, I believe, is actually by the same person that did One Punch Man, and it's they've completed the run. It's all done, and it's if you like the style of One Punch Man, that kind of like he can be really serious, and the animation and the illustration of him when he's serious is you know, it's traditional anime, and then when he's not, it's like dumb. You might like this.
I think what I enjoyed about One Punch Man, and what I think is lacking in a lot of anime I've seen over the years, is self-awareness.
This has got self-awareness.
One Punch Man seemed to know that it's an anime, that it's ridiculous, as most anime stories are kind of crazy, out there, ridiculous stories. And I enjoyed that. And I don't know if that sense of humor is necessarily particularly common, potentially in Japan, I'm not sure. But I enjoyed that very much about that show, being that it wasn't taking itself too seriously. That's the other thing I find about anime, which is very hard to penetrate. It's so very seriously. This is the fate of a world depends on this ridiculous fight between two people, and Pokeballs. You know,
stop! I would not have you slander all anime with fucking Pokeball.
I never forget the time when we watched Dragon Ball, and I think I stopped. This Pikachu arrives soon, you know, like you ever forgave me for that one?
No, I have not, and I have gone back and watched a lot of. I think I've watched like 40. I say a lot, 40 episodes of Dragon Ball. That's not actually a lot when you're talking about Dragon Ball, because there's fucking thousands of episodes of Dragon Ball. But But yeah,
Like I will take it upon myself to watch as much of it as I can stomach. It does
good.
have a very good rating in IMDb.
It is very enjoyable. It does have that self-referential comedy. It does have, there's it's got absurdity to it, so it can't take itself too seriously. It's like, okay, yeah, there's kind of potentially world-ending event happening, but at the same time, they've set themselves up that I know that I shouldn't care too much.
Yeah, I like that. It's Hentai Kamen, one of my favorite Japanese films, the Forbidden Superhero. If you haven't seen, if you can find a copy, do watch it. It's very, very funny. But when they actually take the mickey out of themselves, which doesn't happen much in Japanese film, not much that I see, not much that makes it this far south. They do it quite well. So I enjoy the opportunity to see them do comedy, because Japanese comedies is not really something you think of.
Japanese comedy is kind of widespread, but also it doesn't translate very well.
I think you're right. I suspect that a Western sense of humor, it's maybe why I don't get a lot of why I enjoy things that are fairly rare. Something like Hentai Kamen, very tongue in cheek, sarcastic, sort of ludicrous, playing up on the ludicrousness of Japanese culture. I can't think of too many comedies I've seen other than that.
Yeah, there's it's really interesting because you look at comedy seems to be one of those prized jewels in every culture, whether it's England, Australia, Japan, America, France, Germany, whatever. Everyone kind of goes, "Oh, that's the best comedy," and then suddenly just transplanting it to another society just so often doesn't work. You look at all of the failed attempts of British comedies that got transplanted to America, dead on arrival. The very rare successes, you're looking at The Office. That's kind of it as the standard for it. Everything else has always just failed because comedy is all about that social awkwardness, particularly British comedy. And in many ways, from what I've observed, Japanese comedy is about situational awkwardness. Like, you think of, oh, there's a pretty woman whose breasts have suddenly exploded, and the guy's just noses explode with blood. They go, "Ah!" It's an over-the-top reaction. It's like, that's a commentary on society of Japan. And if you don't get that, it's like, yeah, cool, lecherous. You're not going to see the comedy. You're not.
Having been there a couple of times, it's one of my something I find strange about Japanese culture is that for a very socially conservative culture, where social rules are very important, and also one where sexuality is kind of faux pas. Like you've probably still got that manga magazine I bought back for you. I bought that at a Nagasaki, so this is a very explicit adult-oriented comic book.
That you gave to me in a fucking restaurant.
Totally worth it. But the hilarious thing is that it depictions of genitalia in Japanese media are not allowed. They're blurred, pixelated. Even cartoon genitalia are blurred out in the cut, which is hilarious. I'm like, so that's a really weird thing they've got about like even Japanese pornography. You're not allowed to display the genitalia. You've got to blur that out.
Yeah.
So to then go to a department store where they would have toys for children, 2 steps away from incredibly explicit figurines of large-breasted, anime figures. Like within almost an arm's distance of each other, and you'd be like, "What?
Yeah.
That's really weird." It'd be like tentacle porn on the other side of the aisle. It's just so that's what I enjoy about them. At the same time, I'd be lying if I said I fully understood it.
Hey, you've got to be part of that culture for, I'd say, probably 5 years before you could start to say, yeah, I think I'm starting to get this.
I suspect you're right. It'd take more than a couple of 3-week holidays, but
Yeah.
So you're right. There's some I mean, what I think with all the weird things I saw there are a number that come close to being number one, but I think the one that sticks with me the most was a urinal in an video arcade where there was a video screen above the urinal with a girl reporting the weather wearing a dress. And essentially, you were rewarded with better aim. Her dress would be blown higher by the wind on the LCD screen above the urinal.
To be fair, if someone can't pee into a urinal properly, I would probably go that kind of route. So, like, all right, you know what? Let's reward them for good aim with whatever fucking works.
Only the Japanese would think of gamifying going to the toilet.
Yes, and if it works, I'm all for it.
Well, I can't say if it worked or not. I just noticed it in the one. I'm like, I don't think that would fly in Australia. I just think that might be a bit non-PC.
That's fair. Again, different society.
Anyway, I will check out Mob Psycho this week, and I'll see if we can. That'll give us something interesting to talk about next week.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has been episode 71 of Armchair Producers. We talked about King of Comedy, which was our follow-on from Angel Heart last week. Sorry we weren't able to go live that week. For some reason, passwords didn't work, blah, blah, blah. But we're back. It's fine. We both really loved Angel Heart. And next week, we are going to be talking about Hudson Hawk, which follows on from the manic actress of Bernhardt as Sandra Bernhardt, I think was her name. Yeah. And that is... That's I'm not even going to say it's a guilty pleasure of mine because I'm fucking proud of it. I love Hudson Hawk.
It's a famous flop.
It is a famous flop. It is Danny Aiello, Bruce Willis, Richard E. Grant, and Bernhardt. It's yes, of course. I forgot about her. Wow. Travis is going to be talking about his thoughts on however much he gets through of Mob Psycho 100, and I'm going to do some homework of Jerry Lewis's The Nutty Professor. So join us next week, this time, same place, and we will see you next week, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night.